Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we're going to do something fun. We have seen now all 24 whatever faction previews for Warhammer 40k 10th edition. Each of those previews gave a couple datasheet previews in them. For Tyranids, we got to see the Swarmlord, and I was really curious to see how the Swarmlord is going to stack up to all of these opponents that have been previewed. So what I've done is basically a little bit of a battle between most of these combat characters that have been shown off. Not everyone, I'll touch on which ones I leave out and stuff, and my reasoning behind that. But it's just, we're going to have fun, take it with a grain of salt, and let's see how good Swarmlord is going forward in 10th edition. Before we dive into the battles, just want to remind you guys, check out the links in the description below. War Factor has been recently sponsoring our channel, so check them out. If you want to upgrade your Termagants or your Tyranid Warriors, two big Tyranid models that come to mind, upgrade their base sizes to the proper size. That link is in the description. And become a channel member. Thank you, channel members, for supporting us. Now, with all the way, let's dive into today's video. Like I said, this is way too early battles of just for fun with the Swarmlord. We know the stats, we know how the fight phase works. Let's just see what happens here. So, rules. Each character is going to have a simultaneous shooting phase, charge phase. If there's any command stuff or movement stuff that happens, we'll allow that. They'll get to fight just one round with the benefits of charging. And it'll happen simultaneous, and we will, in the end, compare who did the most damage. No strats. If there is some core army rules, we'll include those. Any specific detachment rules, we won't account for those, but there aren't really any that are going to come into play in this battle, so we're okay there. And like I said, this is just for fun. I'm going to compare who does the most damage in a percent form, so you'll see it right away. Who does the most, and we'll tally it up at the end. And those of you who haven't seen, let's just go over the Swarmlord datasheet quickly. So Swarmlord datasheet, he is a movement of 8, toughness 10, armor save of 2+, wounds 10, leadership 7 up, and objective control of 3. He has two things that are really going to be used in this going forward. It is his ranged synaptic pulse, which is an 18-inch flamer. It has torrent, so it auto hits. D6 plus 3 shots, strength 5, AP minus 1, damage 2. So that's the shooting attack he'll be using every round. And then we have his bone sabers. His bone sabers are 8 attacks. They're weapon skill 2, strength 9, AP minus 2, damage 3. However, they are twin linked, so he gets to reroll all failed wound rolls. So we're going to see how Swarmlord does against all of these opponents. So let's start with round 1, the Malignant Plaguecaster. So Swarmlord comes in here and does, on average, again, these are all averages, 4 wounds in the shooting phase, 9 wounds in melee, which will result in 325% damage done to the caster. In return, the Plaguecaster will do 2 wounds in shooting. He's got a really nice ranged shooting attack, but he fails to do any damage in melee with his staff, just not being great at taking out Swarmlord. Result of 20% damage to the Swarmlord. Round 2 versus Roboute Guilliman. So Swarmlord again does 2 wounds on average. I think it's close to a 50-50, but we'll say 2 wounds to Guilliman in shooting, 9 wounds in melee. That 4 up invuln save is really helping out Guilliman there, which will result in 110% damage to Guilliman. And in return, Guilliman shooting doesn't do much, but his nasty Hand of Dominion with a lethal hits ability on there will do 12 wounds to Swarmlord, resulting in a narrow win of 120% done to Swarmlord. Lethal hits, for those of you who don't know, will turn 6s to wound into flat mortal wounds. So 4 mortal wounds dealt on top of the invuln saves you have to take does do the kicker to him there. Round 3, Ghazghull Thraka. Shooting phase, again, Swarmlord's pretty consistent because he has so many shots with this weapon. You can normally sneak one in for 2 damage on him. And again, a 4-up invuln save. We are leaving Makari out of this because it's kind of a weird deal having this 2-up invuln. We're going to leave him out. So Ghazghull 4-up invuln, you'll see the same thing. 9 wounds dealt, and that is 110% damage. Ghazghull in return, I'll do 1 wound in shooting, 8 wounds in melee, so just a 90% damage for Ghazghull. Ahrirman, the Psychic Boy of the Thousand Suns, not very good at a durability in shooting, so Swarmlord will able to do 6 wounds to him with the Synaptic Pulse, which is really cool to see shooting damage coming from the Swarmlord. 9 wounds in melee, which rounds out to a cool 300% damage done to Ahrirman. In return, Thousand Suns do have their psychic packs that they can do. So Ahrirman would use Doom Bolt. We're going to allow that. It's technically, I believe, a movement phase, or maybe it's a shooting phase deal. But that just does, on average, a flat 5 mortal wounds to Swarmlord. And then coming in with his staff, it has pretty low strength and AP, but he does have a decent number of attacks, and it'll allow him to maybe sneak one of those through for 3 damage, which is an 80% done to Swarmlord in return. Round 5, we're using Trajann Valoris, and for Trajann, he has his Moment Shackle, and in this case, we are going to choose to use the 12 attacks once per battle profile here. So Swarmlord again sneaks out 2 wounds in the shooting phase, does 6 wounds in melee, which totals 8, which is 114% damage, just sneaks it out. However, with 12 attacks on a damage 3 weapon from Trajann, he doesn't do anything in shooting, but he does 15 wounds in melee, which will easily be able to take out the Swarmlord for our sakes. So we then have the Patriarch coming in. Our kin, Swarmlord shows the Patriarch who's boss in the shooting phase, is able to do 4 wounds because the Patriarch is only T5 with a 4-up invuln save. We are able to also do 9 wounds in melee. The 4-up invuln save, again, does shrug a lot of Swarmlord's damage in melee, half of it really, which does result in 217% damage. In return, the Patriarch is just no match for the monster that Swarmlord is. No shooting attacks, only 4 wounds in melee, resulting in just 40% damage there. We then have Abaddon The Despoiler, a model who saw a huge shakeup in his stat line. Swarmlord is able to do, as you've seen, a pretty consistent 2 wounds in shooting, 9 wounds in melee, 122%. Abaddon shooting, just not quite enough with such a low strength and AP there. And then in melee, he does have some good damage with the Drachnian, but it does only result to 9 wounds, which is just 1 wound shy of being able to do any damage there. One of the most fearsome models in all of 40k is Be'lakor. The Swarmlord, again, he is very consistent against these 4-up invuln guys. 2 wounds in shooting, 9 wounds in melee, but that is only 61% of the damage done to Be'lakor because Be'lakor is walking around with 18 wounds. Be'lakor in return has a lot of psychic shooting, which will allow him to do 3 wounds, and then his Blade of the Shadows strike mode, which also has lethal hits, will result in on average 9 wounds there, doing 120% damage, allowing Be'lakor to quite handily take this victory in the demon's favor. Similarly, we have Angron, the Primarch of the World Eaters. The Swarmlord does the same thing, 11 wounds, 68.75% of the damage, just quite 69%, or almost there, nice. Angron in return doesn't have a shooting attack, but pretty averagely picks up 11 wounds onto the Swarmlord. Just so many attacks at such a high damage. Swarmlord takes 110% damage, giving that victory to Angron. Another easy one for Swarmlord, we have Belisarius Cawl. Swarmlord does his 11 wounds as usual, so 110% damage there. Cawl is able to pick out 3 wounds in both shooting and melee, which will allow 60%. Not quite enough to deal with Swarmlord, so victory to the Swarmy. One terrifying one as going through these is Canis Rex. So Swarmlord is only able to pick up 36% damage here, having a 5-up invuln save and being just so tough at T12 does make Swarmlord struggle a little bit. In return, Canis Rex does 4 wounds to shooting, and then a whopping 18 wounds in melee, with Freedom's Hand coming in at a flat 9 damage. Absolutely bonkers how much damage this thing's got. That clearly wipes Swarmy out. This is probably the biggest flop in the enemy's favor so far. Now, one more easy one. Still, Farseers have a 4 Binvone save. Not as great against shooting, so Swarmlord is able to pick up 4 wounds in shooting, 9 wounds as typical in melee, which is 325% damage of the Farseer. And with the Farseer's psychic potential, it is able to do 2 wounds, but that's about it. It's only 20% there. Back to another knight, another terrifying one. Swarmy is only able to do 36% damage. Again, toughness 12 and 22 wounds is a lot to deal with for a single model, especially as we were seeing in 10th edition. The Knight Abominant has some neat abilities which allow him to pick up 2 wounds in the movement phase, 3 wounds in shooting, 6 wounds in melee, which does add up to 11, which is 110% of the Swarmlord. Closer than Canis Rex, that's for sure, but still not really a close one there. And finally, we have the Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight. This is using his hammer profile because personally, I think the hammer is going to be the better one for the Grandmaster specifically going forward. I could be wrong. I'm not a Grey Knight player, but Connor plays him, so I know something about it. Swarmlord does the same, 2 and 9, but with 13 wounds on the Grandmaster, that is not quite enough, being 85% damage. And in return, the Grandmaster is able to pick up 4 wounds in shooting and 9 wounds in melee, doing 130% damage, giving this one to the Grey Knights. Now, we left out a few here. So some of these we left out were from the Necrons, the Guard, the Sisters, the Votann, Tau, and Dark Eldar. These guys all pretty much just had vehicles or different super heavies that just, they don't really fit well for a matchup, as you wouldn't use Swarmlord to really go against these regularly, so I didn't think it was worth including them. And their regular troops that they showed off, was obvious that Swarmlord was going to kill them, so left those ones out. And in just a quick summary here, so Swarmlord had 7 wins, he had 5 losses, and then there were 2 losses, which was against Guilliman and Trajann. However, he still did the damage to kill them. He just didn't do as much damage as they did in return. It was just a fun experiment to do. Let me know what you guys think. Did you find this entertaining to listen to? Not really worth it. It's good to see that Swarmlord is right where I think he should be. He should be the top of the characters, but he's not quite at Primarch level. And that's the way in my opinion, he should be. He should be one of the most feared monsters / leaders in all of 40k at his tier, which is probably, again, the tier right before Titans, specifically Primarchs, like Angron and Guilliman and Be'lakor and Mortarion, and yes, so the only ones that he couldn't kill, Grandmaster and Trajann kind of, are the 2 that stand out as being maybe just a bit better. We'll see how 10th edition goes forward. This is just fun. I want to try it. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got a little bit of entertainment out of it. And we'll see you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.